Hello, this is 13 Heathen speaking. The death of Jet Travolta was a sad and tragic event. However, the media's gotten their hold on it, and all of a sudden it's become all about Scientology. I know a lot about Scientology, and I can see some of the potential correlations, but frankly, I don't care. I was all prepared to say something to Anonymous for choosing this as one of their little causes to go after, but after the Church of Scientology was foolish enough to drag out their little spokesperson, Tommy Davis, I decided it was time to grab those little news articles featuring Tommy Boy and give them a good public once-over. Enjoy.
A memorial service for Jet Travolta will be held today. Since his death, there have been many questions about the Church of Scientology and what it teaches about treating illnesses. We're joined by Tommy Davis, a spokesman for the church. Tommy, good morning.
Good morning.
That audio was from CBS earlier today. He was also interviewed on NBC, and let's see how that one started out.
Tommy Davis is a spokesman for the Church of Scientology International in Los Angeles. Mr. Davis, good morning to you.
Good morning, Meredith. How are you?
I am fine, thank you.
Well, that was pretty fun. Apparently he did learn something in that communication course that he took. Okay, let's head on to the questioning part that they have in here.
Really, you came here to talk about some of the misconceptions about Scientology. So let's start with Scientology and anti-seizure medication. Is that all right under Scientology? Can a Scientologist take anti-seizure medication if it is prescribed by a doctor?
Wow, there was certainly no foreplay there, but what about CBS? How did theirs start?
First of all, what are the biggest misconceptions you've heard in this last week about Scientology?
Hey, wait a minute. They both started with the same question, just worded a little bit differently. That's interesting. Let's see what his responses are.
Yeah, I think really the biggest is really the thing you have to understand is Scientologists, like many people, like anybody, we go to doctors. If somebody's sick, some sort of physical ailment, we go to the doctor. You get a prescription, whatever the course of treatment that would be recommended by a doctor, you're going to do that. And, it's very important. It's not, really it's actually something that's mandatory from the church's viewpoint. Someone has some sort of physical difficulty or problem, something's happening with them, they're ill, go to a doctor, get it checked out, find out what's going on. If it involves a prescription or whatever treatment the doctor recommends, they're going to do that.
Now for the NBC answer.
Absolutely, yeah. Whenever you're dealing with any kind of physical condition, this isn't the kind of thing that's even an option. This is mandatory. You have some sort of physical condition diagnosed by a medical doctor, and that doctor is prescribing a medication. The person's going to take it. Just like anybody else would. You're dealing with a physical condition, you're going to do that.
Now, I should note that in the regular flow of this, there is a bonus question, so to speak, that is asked by NBC, and that is as follows.
See, Tommy, I think some of the confusion comes from your own website, because it states that all Scientologists lead drug-free lives. So does that not mean then all drugs, but just maybe illicit drugs, illegal drugs, like cocaine or marijuana?
Now, to me, it doesn't sound like Tommy really expected that question, but he does answer it, after which he once again reiterates the same canned response that he gave earlier.
As far as medical drugs, as far as going to a doctor and dealing with any kind of physical condition or something that might be wrong with somebody, Scientologists go to doctors for sure. It's a matter of church policy, frankly. Someone has some sort of physical condition, they're suffering in some way, something's going on, they're going to go to a doctor and seek conventional medical help and follow that course of treatment that any doctor would recommend.
What if it's a psychological condition or a neurological condition like autism? Does the church recognize that?
Okay, so over the course of 2 interviews, we have 3 canned replies. Yet on NBC, they just asked about psychiatric drugs. I believe we've caught up with CBS. Let's jump there to that feed for now.
What about psychiatric drugs?
The same questions in the same order. I'm starting to think that the Church of Scientology gave them a list of questions they were allowed to ask Tommy, as well as an order. Fascinating that. Well, I might just be jumping to conclusions, but let's hear to his responses to this.
Well, there's a difference. We're talking about a medical condition. When you have a medical condition and there's something happening with the body, there's some sort of illness going on, that's what...
But people think, a medical condition can be a chemical imbalance, take antidepressants, but Scientology doesn't think that's a medical condition?
Well, that's not even a viewpoint as far as Scientologists are concerned. That's something that's really clear. Just even in the medical community, you have physical ailments, there's something wrong with the body, there's something happening. That can even involve malfunctions with the brain or these kinds of things, and those things are treated. Like seizures, for example, you're going to, if there's an anti-seizure medication recommended by a doctor, you're going to do that.
Next.
Well, when you're talking about a medical condition, you're talking about something that's physically wrong with somebody and that kind of thing in the province of a medical doctor. I mean, that's really what we're talking about here. And sometimes physical conditions involve the brain or some sort of malfunctioning, in that regard. And again, that's absolutely the province of medicine, and Scientologists go to doctors for that.
Does the Church of Scientology acknowledge there is such a thing as autism?
To the degree you have a medical condition, like there's something going on, like seizures or some sort of physical problem that's happening with the body, that's going to get treated by a doctor. But the Church doesn't involve itself in diagnosing or classifying medical conditions. I mean, it's just not. We, as a church, we deal with the spirit, and in terms of bodies and the handling of physical problems, that's something for the medical community.
I wonder what my Dianetics audiobook would have to say about that.
Chapter 4. Diagnosis.
No, that's not quite the part I was thinking of.
With the techniques presented in this handbook, the intelligent layman can successfully treat all psychosomatic ills.
Then again, we can't just throw that out there without defining what Scientologists consider to be psychosomatic ills.
Chapter 5. Psychosomatic illness. Psychosomatic illnesses are those which have a mental origin, but which are nevertheless organic. The problem of psychosomatic illness is entirely embraced by Dianetics. And by Dianetic technique, such illness has been eradicated entirely in every case. About 70% of the physician's current roster of diseases fall into the category of psychosomatic illness. How many more can be so classified after Dianetics has been in practice for a few years is difficult to predict, but it is certain that more illnesses are psychosomatic than have been so classified to date. That all illnesses are psychosomatic is of course absurd, for there exist, after all, life forms called germs, which have survival as their goals. The work of Louis Pasteur formulated the germ theory of disease. With Dianetics is gained the non-germ theory of disease.
That is from the scripture of Scientology. That is their tech. That is what they believe. Now let's hear what Tommy has to say about it.
The Church of Scientology says it does not acknowledge or deny the existence of autism.
Tommy?
Some people who have reported on the church and some who have left the church have said that according to Scientology, people with disabilities like autism, that they are capable of curing themselves by working harder on the church's teachings. Is that the position of Scientology?
Absolutely not. I mean, that's completely false, and what you said is not true. I've never heard of any such thing, and it certainly doesn't sound like anything I've ever heard. I can tell you it's absolutely, absolutely not true.
So do you think it's fair of me to call old Tommy a liar yet? Well, if not, let's have a little bit more content here.
Seizures or some sort of physical problem that's happening with the body, that's going to get treated by a doctor. But the church doesn't involve itself in diagnosing or classifying medical conditions. I mean, it's just not. We, as a church, we deal with the spirit, and in terms of bodies and the handling of physical problems, that's something for the medical community.
Well, now for a word from the founder of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard, in one of his audio lectures, also considered part of their quote tech, their scripture.
And then people who have epilepsy, which is a type of disease which gives them seizures, are almost always found on some minor drug that prevents them from getting these, they call them petite mal seizures. That's epilepsy. But the doctors keep them on something to prevent this. It's just a tranquilizer. And they keep them on that 1 year, year in and year out. And then you come along as an auditor and you try to audit the PC, and you tell the PC that they'll have to go off that drug. And then all of a sudden, something will happen from some place or another that the PC will tell the doctor that they have been taken off the drug by the auditor, and the doctor will call up plaintively asking you to please put her back on the drug because she needs this. And you get into a collision between medical treatment and so on.
Naturally, this makes me wonder if old Tommy Davis would recognize how full of shit he is or not at this point. Well, Tommy, what do you think?
We don't recognize or not recognize anything. I mean, we're a church.